Egg Show. I'm your host, Ben Gothard, and today we have the honor of speaking with Stacey Chillemi. How you doing today, Stacey?
Hi, how are you, Ben?
I am wonderful, and I'm so excited to chat with you today because I really want to ask, what is your story?
It started a long time ago. I always had an interest in health, but in the beginning, it all started. I was working in the city, and I was working for a very big corporation, and I was really into like marketing and advertising and working with different TV shows, and I was on a lot of TV shows doing the back end. And as time went on, I suffer from epilepsy. Like I developed it at the age of 5, and at the end, and it was for a long time they were trying to get my seizures controlled, and they were having a really difficult time. So when I was working in the city, I was still having seizures, and I was still, struggling with my epilepsy. And then there was a time where I had a seizure. I had fell to the floor, and actually one of the producers kept walking, and he walked over me, and he kept walking. And then 30 minutes later, one of the associate producers came over, and they told me that I didn't really meet their requirements, and that they're sorry, but they're going to have to let me go. And back then, I didn't really think about it too much. Like, I was hurt, I was upset, but I wasn't going to let it, get me down. So, I kept, thinking, about different things that I really wanted to do. And, I was getting married soon, and I was doing the whole thing. So I was just focusing on, what I had ahead. And I figure, you know what, I'll find something that's right for me. There's, for everybody, there's always something out there. Everybody has a purpose in life. That's what I believe. And, in time, I think we all go through things in life because, it's a journey where we find our weaknesses and our strengths, and eventually we find our purpose. And that's what we need to really focus on, is our purpose in life. And so as time went on, I had always had a strength in writing, and I was always very good at it. So I was, in the process of writing a book during that time. And so I opened up my own freelance business, and I started writing, and I started doing different things with different organizations. And they had me come to like Washington to speak in front of Congress about a lot of different topics, like job discrimination and helping people with disabilities. And so I was, as I was writing, and like I told you, I was writing a freelance business. I had met an an herbalist, and he was really into helping and healing the body naturally. So he had me do a lot of research and writing for him. And so as I was researching, a lot of the stuff sounded really interesting, and I was always into health, and that was always one of the things I did a lot on the background. So I started applying a lot of the stuff that I was learning to my own body. And my seizures went from 9 seizures to 6 seizures to 3 to 2. And, with the usage of the medication that the doctors were giving me, and by applying, different ways, lifestyle changes and different ways of eating, my seizures became controlled. And I was able to actually, at that point, I was writing, and I started a little blog on Blogger, and I had like about 400 people, and then all of a sudden I was doing work for a website guy, and I would write his content. He would make websites, and I would write the content. He's like, I can make this into something really amazing for you. And so he created a website for me. And the website we went from to it was 400 to 10,000 to 300,000 people. And it just grew and grew and grew. And people were like, there's a lot of people out there that are really interested in natural health and healing the body. And people don't want to always have to rely on medication. They want to be able to, focus on, doing stuff for themselves. So it was great. During this process, I was meeting so many different people. I was helping people. People were asking me to do speaking events and to talk about health and to talk about my own experience. And, it was just like a total turnaround. It was like, I always pictured myself having martinis on a Friday night, working for this big corporation and working on TV shows. And one day I'll be on one of those TV shows doing one of those news programs. And it ended up totally opposite, where here I am reaching out to others and helping people improve their health and their lives. And it was totally different. But I took my life led me into a totally different path. And actually I'm doing something that I actually love. So that's the greatest part. I tell people all the time, when they're focusing on what to do in life, make sure it's something that you love, something that you have a passion for. So that's where I am right now. I'm just like, I have my business with the Complete Herbal Guide, and I do a lot of speaking events, and I help a lot of people and do a lot of health coaching, trying to help people teach themselves how to change their lifestyles to make themselves feel better, healthy and healthy wise, and and do that type of stuff.
You alluded um, to purpose,
Mhm.
and I believe I heard you were talking about how everybody has their purpose.
Oh, most definitely.
And I agree with you. I absolutely agree. And I'm curious to learn, and you kind of talked about it, but I want to ask directly, like, what is your purpose?
I really feel like, I didn't realize it till later on, but I felt, I had written an article, and I had started writing a book, like I was telling you, and it was called Epilepsy You're Not Alone. And that book, at that time, there weren't many books on the subject. And, someone had wrote me back and sent me an email, and they found my book in Barnes and Nobles, and they said they picked it up. They were on the verge of committing suicide because they had gotten the disorder, they were taking seizures, they lost their job, they couldn't take care of their family anymore, and they lost their license, they couldn't do anything, they felt trapped, they just didn't see a purpose for them. And then they read my book, and they followed my regimens and my advice, and she said that she had a totally different, just different view on life, that she followed it, and she said that she realized that she has a purpose in life, that she has, that she's meant to be on this planet. And she said my book gave her hope and strength. And she's actually living with it. She learned how to cope with it, and she moved on in life. And it was at that point where didn't realize it, but words have such an impact on people's lives, and you don't realize it. But the things that you do and you say can impact a person's life so much. And at that point, I realized how powerful words are. And and that's when I realized that that was my purpose. I was here to help people. I was here to use the abilities that I was given, and I would to help others. And that's what I focused on all those years. I've been trying to do things to help others, because everybody in this world has something. You can't nobody's perfect. We all have something, whether it's a sleep disorder or a condition or a disease. Everybody has something. And I want to be the person out there trying to help these people the best I can. And that's what my focus is on. And I think too, when you do things you love, you really have an energetic and powerful impact. And people see that, and people draw to you. So it's always, that you can, as time goes on, you kind of have to listen to yourself, finding your purpose. I always say it's not your brain that's talking to you, it's your heart. And you got to go with what your heart tells you. And that's, it's really stop listening to others and start listening to yourself. Listen to your heart.
I love that answer, um, because I feel like it's a really important distinction, of this greater, almost ethereal purpose of helping people, but then actually being able to manifest that through the writing,
Right.
through the speaking, through the health challenges, and the knowledge of how to overcome those health challenges. So what I really want to ask is getting getting concretely aware of this purpose. Does that come before building out, or honing the skills that are the vehicle to accomplish that purpose? Or do they happen simultaneously? Is there a chronology, or does it just, is it just random? Does it just happen?
I think we all have the skills. I think sometimes we don't acknowledge them at first. I think sometimes, sometimes we're so focused on what, we thought we wanted to do, or we focus on what society, we think society, what we should do, and we don't really focus on our true strengths. Like I had someone tell me, they focused on a career, and they did it because they knew that, you can get a lot of money and make, have a good life, doing a specific type of career, but it wasn't what they truly loved. And then it was later on that they did, they realized, this isn't making me happy. and they did a total turnaround and they focused on what really made them happy. And it was then that they actually became successful. It's like we all, it's like, what do you love to do in life? And how can we turn that love into an actual career? Because it not only, it brings happiness because you can do the things you love and you can make a living out of it and have a happy life, and that's the best thing, is being able to get up in the morning and do the things that actually make you happy, and not have to, get up and cringe every time you get out of bed because you're going somewhere where you don't want to be, and that maybe you're not making the greatest pay in the world, but you don't know, there's not no other options out there, so you're kind of feel like stuck. So it's like, then what do you do? And sometimes you have to like look within yourself and think, what are the options? Because there's always options. We just have to be courageous and want to just actually jump into it and try it.
Agree more. And especially on the piece of we always have options. And I think the nuance there is I believe we do always have options. Sometimes I think, and of course it's just my opinion, that sometimes it's hard to recognize those
Oh,
options.
most definitely. It definitely is. And it has to do too sometimes with self-esteem and confidence. A lot of people are scared of change. People fear change, and they know they're in a safe zone, and they're terrified, and sometimes you don't realize it, but some people are they think of the worst thing that could happen. Every decision they make, they think of the worst thing first instead of trying to focus on the positive and thinking what good can come out of this, because you could always go back, you could always go backwards, but it's hard sometimes to go forward. But, sometimes really great things can happen by taking a chance. And you have to just build on your self-esteem and your confidence too, because it takes a lot of confidence to take chances in life and to do things that are new, but if you have that strength and you take those chances, you can't lose. What's the worst thing that could happen? It doesn't work out for you, so then you go back to what you were originally doing. You know what I'm saying? So it's always great to take chances, but people sometimes don't always think of it like that.
I agree. So when you were thinking about the skills that you were the best at, and it seems like from an earlier point, an earlier age, you had identified writing as
Hmm.
kind of your craft, if you will. Um, how did you actually go about making that decision? And we talked a little bit about recognizing our gifts, our skills, but maybe it doesn't seem like that's what we're the best at, or maybe we just don't want to recognize it. So what was the actual process you went through, the decision making process of, okay, I'm going to focus on writing, and maybe you didn't go through this, but I'm curious.
Yeah.
I'm going to focus on writing. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to hone this craft.
I went out and I kind of like I kind of when I started writing, I also contacted a lot of people in the field, and I was asked to write different pieces for different books, and and then some editors of these books contacted me and they said, we really like your stuff, but this is what I was focusing on the wrong things, or I was doing things that aren't the greatest way of doing things, and people actually they knew I had the abilities, and they were a couple steps ahead of the game, and they actually wanted to help me. And a lot of times you'll find, if you actually reach out and the best way to learn is to be open-minded and to reach out, and you'd be so surprised because everybody started at not everybody was given everything, and a lot of people remember where they came from, and a lot of people want to help others, and that was the thing. There were so many people who had succeeded in my field, and they wanted to help me because they saw that I had certain strengths and they wanted me to build on those strengths. So they reached out to me and they said, Stacey, you're great in this, but you need to get better. And this is what you need to do. And and I had people who ripped up my writing, and not ripped physically, but they pointed out every little error that you imaginable, and that you got to start doing it this way, not this way, and even like people came up to me and said, you're amazing with speaking. You really impact people when you speak, and sometimes we don't realize these things ourselves, or we just, our confidence might not be there yet. We might not, sometimes we see other people's strengths but we don't give ourselves enough of credit too. We sometimes we should step behind, a couple steps, and really look at ourselves, where we were at and where we are now, and give yourself a pat on the back. There's nothing wrong with giving yourself a pat on the back. And I think people never really do that much. But you have to always think, where did you come from and where you are now? And you know what? And then I always say, make long-term goals and short-term goals. And you don't have to do it right away. It's like every day is a stepping stone, and with those, you give yourself challenges, and it's not failure if you don't reach those goals. It's just they're ways of giving yourself momentum to move forward and to succeed.
So it seems like for in your experiences that you were already writing and somebody reached out to you, or a couple people reached out, and they extended the helping hand and really kind of put more light, kind of put the spotlight on that skill, and they were like,
Yeah.
hey, this is awesome. Before that happened, why did you start writing? Like, how did you come to the conclusion, i'm going to begin the I'm going to begin the journey as a writer? Like, how did that decision making process go down?
When I was struggling with epilepsy, I started making a journal, and I started writing all my feelings and all my thoughts on paper. And then I would try to make goals for myself. I'd make long-term goals, short-term goals, what I was going to do, how I was going to just, not let this disorder get me down. I was going to move ahead. And I wanted to, there was no reason why I should let a disorder stop me from being the person I wanted to be. I might not be exactly the person that, we all have that little thing, expectation in our head, and we all probably, it's probably unrealistic, but you always want to reach a certain level, but sometimes we're not meant to be at that certain level, sometimes, and it's like I gave myself like short-term goals and long-term goals, and then I started writing journals, and then I started taking pieces from the journals and writing articles out of them, spinning them into articles. And then I was getting such great feedback. People were telling me how I was helping them and how this is great. Oh, you should write a book. I ended up writing 20 books, over the course of my life. It was like, and then I actually had like one doctor, like he came up to me, he said, Stacey, you really should write a book on this, because it's amazing. Your story is amazing. And the next time I saw him, I had a script in my hand, and he actually reached out to his publishing agency, and he helped me get the book published. And that book was actually the first book published in their publishing house that wasn't a doctor. I was the first person that wasn't a doctor that they actually published my book, because they just were so, like, they loved it. And that was such a great feeling to be, everyone in that publishing house was a doctor that got published, and I was the first person who, wasn't a doctor, but they thought my writing was great. They thought the message was great, and they published my book. So, that was like a kind of inspirational, like, hey, wake up. You have a talent, use it. And it's like, and so I kept moving forward. And I'll tell you one thing, it's not the money. The ability to help somebody, the ability to actually be able to improve someone else's life is such a great feeling. Not only are you helping yourself, because you learn every day in this field, but you're actually able to help others. And that's a great feeling, to reach out, because anyone can make money and everything. A lot of times people forget, and sometimes people get too engulfed in making money, and they lose the purpose, because life, it's nice to live comfortable and have a great life, money wise, but that doesn't bring you happiness. You have to be happy with who you are and yourself, and that comes into doing the things you love and the things that make you feel good. And that's when people succeed as an entrepreneur, or they succeed in a business, because they're doing something they really love, and you can see it, and people could see it, people around them.
So it seems like in the very beginning, it was that natural creative expression, or that natural catharsis
Yeah.
that you actually needed to heal and to just express.
Right. Yeah. Because at that point, I was really at a low. I was feeling depressed. I was feeling like, what's my purpose in life? I felt like every time I took 3 steps forward, I got knocked back 2 steps. Like, it was like, it was like my disorder was holding me back from doing the things I wanted to do. I wasn't getting to the point that I wanted to get. And it's really hard, like, when you suffer from anything in life, when you have the ability to be here, and then you can't get there because of your disability. It's like your brain is taking you here, but your body and that disorder is, pushing you back, because every time you push yourself, you had a seizure from the stress or this or that, and you couldn't, and it was just like you just couldn't get to the point you wanted to. And that's when depression sets in. That's when your self-esteem gets hit, and then you figure out, like, what the hell am I here for? Why is this happening to me? So many people with disorders or disabilities or diseases feel angry because, people get fatigued and people get tired. People can't do the things they want to do. And it's frustrating, and so it's like all these negative emotions. How do we get rid of it? How do we heal it? How do we focus on the stuff we really love? And how do we make something of our lives so we feel good as a person? And that was where, it all started, trying to heal myself. And then when I figured out how to heal myself, and I did heal myself, then I wanted to help others, because I knew I met so many people just like me out there that struggled with not just epilepsy, but everything, diabetes, heart problems, this, that, and it's just like, if I could heal myself, I don't have to focus on epilepsy. I could focus on everything, because the things I did for myself were standard, and so, positive thinking and changing the way I sleep, changing the way I eat, just focusing on how I handle stress and how I cope with life, not letting the big little things in life get to me, focusing on the things I have to, and just not letting it overwhelm me, and, things like that. So these are things that everybody struggles with and wants to learn about. So that's how I made my website and my books and my speaking events, and people really, really drew to it, and they really, they were appreciative. And I didn't even realize it, but they told me that it changed them so much. It helped them so much. And I was like, really? I was like, because you don't really give yourself enough of credit. You don't think, that what you have to say will impact the person next to you. And even you talk about business and entrepreneur, and you help people, get their abilities to go out and make a helpful and strong career. People don't, there's so many people who want to, but just don't know where to start, or they just, are too scared, or they just need somebody out there, to give them the direction, and things like this help people and can change people's lives.
I agree. I agree so much, and I appreciate what you said, and I also want to comment on the fact that it seems like when you were at this low point, or at this place of just pain, of feeling like, of knowing that your ambition was up here, but I mean, you had physical limitations that
Yeah.
you physically could not get there. And that I don't know what that's like. I can only imagine how painful that must be. And out of that pain, the out of that came getting through that is where you kind of not kind of, you tapped into this new skill, this new path that has now taken you to incredible places.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And like when I was trying to get controlled, and there was a point where my doctors asked me, they didn't want me driving until I can get controlled, until everything was, till my health was back to normal. And for 15 years I didn't drive. I just, and that's when I worked from home. And in a sense, you felt like you were actually like imprisoned in your own home, because you couldn't, you had to ask other people to help you. And for me, I'm an independent person. I don't like to ask for help, so that was like, to me, it was like, it was torturous, but that was a time when I had, like I told you, I started my freelance business, and I wrote some really inspiring stories. Even Jack Cranfield, he wrote his books. His it was his a lot of his editors came out, and they were like, they wanted me to work with them, and help them with a lot of stories. And it was like, and that it was just little things that kind of led, to the place I am today. And, now my life is completely opposite of where I began. But, it all started where I took something that was negative and I turned it into a positive, and then I made it into a whole, career. And now I not only help myself, but I'm helping hundreds of others. And it's a great feeling.
It's amazing. So let's talk about because it seems like you've done a lot of work, both professionally of writing and honing your craft and building your audience and building your business. But I would also venture to say that you've probably done a lot of work on yourself too,
Oh, yeah.
and asked yourself some really hard questions and wrestled with just a lot of internal growth opportunities.
Yeah. Mhm.
What have been some of those? And I know we talked about them a little bit, but I want to again ask directly, what have been some of those um, transformations, and what were some of the biggest lessons that you've learned up until now?
I really had to focus on, like, I worked, like I said, like, I was I had low self-esteem in myself because I was just not, I was not the person that I wanted to be, and I wasn't sure if I ever could reach that, and then I also, when in the beginning, I noticed that I compared myself to others, and I think that's one of the worst things you could do. You
Mhm.
sometimes, everybody's different. We all have different strengths and weaknesses. We all are our own person, and you can't really compare yourself to others. You really should just focus on yourself. And like I said, I was feeling depressed because I was not at the place in life I wanted to be. And when you get depressed too, you can, when you fall into a specific, era, like a hole, it's very hard to get out of that hole. And I really, I had to work on feeling good about myself, feeling good about who I was, and really accepting me as a person and loving myself and realizing that this is who I am. I have to accept myself and I have to move on. And that's what I did. I had this say, this is who Stacey is. I love her. I accept her. This is what life has given me, and I got to take it and I got to roll with it. And that's exactly what I did. And I just, little by little, I started feeling good about myself. Started feeling stronger, and I just kept going and just kept trying to make the best out of it.
That almost reminds me of some text in Self-Reliance by Ralph Waldo Emerson. In that piece, he actually talks a little bit about it's top of mind because I read it recently.
Mhm.
But he actually talks about, look, we are who we are,
Mhm.
and like we are who like that's what we've got, like,
Right.
and we are good enough. And
Yeah.
so accepting ourselves for who we are,
Mhm.
not saying that we don't want to improve and get better, but almost like being self-aware and understanding, like, this is where I am right
Right.
now. Like, this
Mhm.
is the reality of the situation.
Yeah.
At that point, it's like, okay, now you recognize your strengths, you
Mhm.
recognize your weaknesses, and you can make a game plan that's realistic based on,
Right.
and not realistic in like the don't aim high. Not at all. I'm like the biggest proponent of aiming high. But
Yeah.
like, but realistic in the in terms of like, don't ask a fish to climb a tree, realistic. Like
Right.
understanding what you're actually good at. And
Yeah.
and so, I wanted to comment on that because I thought it was interesting that the parallels there.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm just so fascinated by this concept of self-awareness, right? So when did it really click for you of, oh, this is who I am. Oh, these are, this is who Stacy is. These are the qualities that I have. Okay, got it. Now let's rock and roll. When did that happen?
It was when I started writing my first book, when I told you about epilepsy, you're not alone. What I did was is I started in college, but I never finished. It was when I got out of college, I actually finished the book. But when I started in college, my seizures were not good at that time. So like late night studying and, the stress of college, I was taking seizures. So I wrote an article into the Epilepsy Foundation. They have a magazine, and I asked them to publish it. And I asked people, how do you cope with this disorder? And I got so many stories. I got like 300 to 400 letters from all over the United States and Canada, people sharing their life story with me, sharing how they live with it. And I realized, you know what? I'm not the only one with this. There were so many people just like me with the same thoughts, the same feelings. And then when I started putting those stories into the book, and then I started applying a lot of the advice that they gave me, I learned from these people. And I learned that, I'm not alone. I'm just like them. They're just like me. People, there's thousands of people out there. I'm not going to feel sorry for myself. I'm going to accept who I am. I'm going to love myself, and I'm going to move on and do the best I can, and see what life, takes me. And that's what I did. And that's when I started applying their advice to my life, and a lot of these things were working. And then I added some other things to it. And that's when I put all that advice into the book. And then, I just, people were thanking me for the book. And that's when how it all just like started rolling. And I started feeling good about myself, and I started feeling stronger, and that inner strength. And I always say faith, courage, wisdom, strength, and hope. And when you put all those words together and you apply it to your life, it's amazing what was going to happen to you.
That's amazing. So let's talk about right now.
Hmm.
Again, staying on this theme of working on ourselves and really understanding more of who we are at our core.
Right.
Um, what questions do you still have about yourself now? Where are you working on yourself at this current moment?
I think at this current moment, I'm still trying to figure out, like I see myself always put in higher goals. But then it's like sometimes I wonder, am I really meant for those goals? Like sometimes I feel like, like I always believe I'm always one for like the spirits and, and the messages. Like we always get messages. We got to be aware what those messages are. And I always feel like the spirits and God is always talking to us, as corny as that may sound. And sometimes you get little messages here and there, but every time I try to really strive higher, it seems like life takes me back down. So you know what? I had to stop and think, you know what? Maybe I should just be appreciative for where I am right now. I have a successful business. I have a happy marriage. I have a great family. Maybe I'm not meant to be all the way up here. Maybe I'm meant to be over here, and maybe I should just focus on this level and really build on this level and not so much worry about where, how high I want to be, but actually focus on now and focus on, because sometimes when you focus on what you can be or where you should be, you don't put 100% into where you are now. And then things aren't as good as they should be. And then, you know what? Quality matters. It's not quantity, quality. So really, stop trying to focus so much up on top, focus on what you have right now and build on it. And, and you'll see like things start to actually work out even better. People notice the quality. People notice the greatness. You could have like, you could have a website with 3 articles and they could be amazing articles, and you could have 1 million people come to your website. You could have 1,000 articles and they could be all shit and nobody comes to the website. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's really about quality, and focusing on what you have and just keep building on it, because that's what really matters. It's like, sometimes you could have goals, but just really focus on where you're at right now, and really build on that, and build on being the best you can, and then whatever is meant to be is going to just come. If you're meant to be up there, eventually you will be, but if you're not, you're going to be staying at this level. But be happy. You should be happy with it, because I always had to look back and say, there's so many people that have a lot less, or have, can't get there, and you've gotten there. So be happy, be appreciative. Sometimes we take for granted and we don't appreciate what we actually have, and that's what you got to do too. Is not, you could have goals, but focus on making your business, or focus on making your everything that you have right now the best it possibly can. And don't try to overstress yourself either. I've noticed sometimes I put too much energy and then I get drained. And then what good are you when you're drained? So it's like, every day, put in some, but don't overdo it, be realistic. Because if you drain yourself, then you're not good, because you're too tired, and then you lose the momentum because you just don't want to do it right now. So then where does your business, or where does your, you know, what you're doing, where does it go? So really take each day one day at a time, do the best you can that day, and then the next day will happen. And then you just keep going and going.
So, Stacey, I want to thank you very, very much for coming on the show and
Thank you.
sharing this time with me. It's been very meaningful for me, and I want to be very respectful of your time. So, I do have one more question for you.
Sure.
Then we'll wrap it on up.
All
And
right.
I want to ask specifically from my perspective, from the perspective of a 24-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
What question should I be asking you that I just wouldn't think to ask?
Oh, wow. Let's see. I guess, ooh, that's a hard question. I guess, what really are the important aspects to focus on, I guess, because when you're 24, I think, when I was 24, I thought I could do it all. And sometimes we don't realize, and you know what, I think the biggest thing is too, you think you know it all. I think, and I realized that you always, and as I gotten older, I realized you have to be open-minded. And you know what? And you can't listen to everybody, but the people who have succeeded in life and that are doing the things you want to do, listen to them. If they give you advice, or if they have something really good to say, take it in. You may not agree with everything they're saying, but think about it, absorb it, and then maybe use some of that information to help you out, and help your business out. Because I know at 24, I didn't want to really hear too much of what everyone else had to say. I felt like I could do it all. I was infallible. And when I got older, I realized, every day I'm learning. And every day, people are throwing out stuff, and I learn from people. And you really have to just focus on the people that really know their stuff in your field, they're at the levels that you want to be one day. So they're actually doing something right. So those are the people you want to listen to, and even ask advice, because they obviously know what they're doing.
Well, again, thank you so, so much, Stacey, for coming on the show today. I,
Thank you for
I
having me.
and again, I really do appreciate your time, and it's been very special. So thank you very much. And to everybody who is watching and listening, I want to thank y'all very, very much. Y'all rock. And the whole purpose of the show is really to help you turn your dreams into reality. And so I think this episode's been really powerful, especially talking about about purpose and self-awareness, and finding really finding your way, almost by going into the obstacles that may seem like the biggest challenges at the time. So I think there were a lot of really powerful themes here. So thank you again, Stacey. Thank you to
Thank
everybody who's
you.
watching and listening. And I will see you all on the next episode. Take care now.